Hey, welcome back to the ADHD Coterie. I am talking this week about ADHD and self-worth, and this is another big one because I feel like folks with ADHD tend to really struggle with their self-worth. And it's interesting to see how that has sort of played out in their world. And I think self-worth is an interesting term because it's often used interchangeably with the words or the terms self-esteem and self-confidence, when really they're two very different concepts. Self-worth is really like the foundation of how you feel about yourself and what you believe your place is in this world, right? It's the belief that you have fundamental worth and fundamental value here in this world and on this planet, right? Whereas sort of self-esteem is more what you protrude into society, how people sort of perceive that you feel about yourself. And you can fake that. You can fake that really, really well. In fact, there's lots of people who have really high self-esteem on the outside, but feel very, very poorly about themselves authentically. And there's actually a term for that, and it's called narcissism. And I'm sure we all know somebody who has the narcissistic trait. So, you know, it's something that I see, or it's something that I see happen quite frequently for folks with ADHD. And it's an area that's near and dear to my heart because it really comes from those core traumas that we all experience as children. But the difference I feel like for people with ADHD is that it's messaging that they get consistently, that if they don't know that they have ADHD, or they're being raised by people that don't understand ADHD or surrounded by people that don't understand ADHD, becomes such an internal part. They feel like they grow up feeling like they're wrong or they're bad or they're damaged. Okay. So let's start getting into some of that. They all begin sort of in childhood, and even if you had what you would call, and I see this often with clients, whether they have ADHD or not, they feel like they have no right to have any challenges or have any negative thoughts or negative, I can't believe I'm struggling with this. I never had a bad experience in my life, or my childhood was so wonderful. My parents were so loving. They gave us everything, all these things, right? But what ends up happening, and none of this is intentional, you know, for the most part. I do believe that people are fundamentally good. Do I believe that there are some bad, abusive people out there? Of course, there are. But for the most part, I believe that people are fundamentally good. And I don't believe that most people are trying to harm somebody else. They just don't know the impact of the things that they're saying and doing. And that's based on their own experiences. That's based on their own beliefs and their own schemas, which is, a schema is sort of like how they view the world and how they see certain situations. And a lot of those are so deep-seated and basic that shifting those paradigms and shifting those ways of thinking become almost impossible. And so what we're talking about here when we're talking about those things are core traumas, right? And when you hear the word trauma, typically you think of a massive event in terms of a car crash or a house fire, or maybe an exposure to like a war event or something like that, or an abusive event, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, something like that. But there are actually all kinds of little micro traumas that happen along the way for all children, for everybody, for every human. Every single one of us has experienced some sort of trauma within our world. And really what it is a challenge against who we authentically feel we are on the inside, right? Somebody somewhere along the lines telling us to stop doing what we feel is authentically who we are, right? And they tell us that over and over again. So the messaging then becomes who you are is wrong, who you are is bad. So for the little 4-year-old girl who is just constantly on the go, constantly busy, constantly chattering all the time, and the parents who are just like, would you just stop talking? Over time, she's sort of internalizing that and feeling like what's wrong with her that she's chatting. And the parents don't have any negative intentions with that. It's just that their ears are tired. She's been talking all day long, but really it starts to accumulate over time, and it then becomes something that as she gets older, she begins to mask, okay? So we're talking here about sort of pushing down and hiding who we authentically are, and that chips away over time at their self-worth, right? Because they don't feel like who they authentically are is of value. So as we move forward, we're going to start talking about things like that, because people with ADHD, especially people who have been undiagnosed with ADHD into adulthood, girls with ADHD, because they don't tend to get diagnosed with ADHD until much later, because their symptoms are not as obvious as boys. They don't tend to have the hyperactivity piece, as well as folks who have had ADHD diagnosed, but they have a family, they're raised by a family who just does not accept the fact that it's ADHD and raise them with the belief that they just need more discipline. And so then they come at it with a much more firmer hand, the spare the rod, spoil the child sort of attitude, where it's very hefty discipline, a lot of firm hands and things like that. That what we know now is really not effective. It's not effective for any child, but it's not effective for children with ADHD. So we're going to start discussing that in a little bit more depth. Now, when we're born, we're just free. There is nothing inhibiting us. We're hungry, we cry. We're wet, we cry. We just tell the whole world what we need, and the whole world comes running to us to meet our need. But as we become older and a little bit more demanding, and our needs become a little bit more different, and we also become a little bit more self-sufficient, the world is less interested in helping us meet our needs, right? So if you're a child whose needs are, well, extra, so to speak, and you are a little bit more demanding on the emotional side or the physical side or whatever, people become less and less interested in meeting your need. So you get sort of rejected or pushed away a lot more often, right? People are like, can you just go play? Or look, we're not doing this right now. And so then they start to feel the message over and over again that what they need is not important. So therefore, who they are is not of value. And they internalize that, and they feel that very, very deeply. And as these kids start to grow up, they begin to mask those bad behaviors. And sometimes they'll even turn into the good kids, the quiet kids that sit in the corner, the kids who they're not going to make a ruckus. They're not going to push back at home. They're not going to talk back at home. Those are actually warning signs. Those are warning signs that those kids don't have any sense of self-worth, because they don't feel like their voice is important. They don't feel like their voice matters, and they don't feel like they have a leg to stand on. So they've been pushed back enough that they're not going to stand up for who they feel on the inside that they are, because they feel like who they are on the inside is not worthy. So what's going to happen is, as they get older, they're going to act that out in different ways that are unhealthy. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse, suicide ideation, promiscuity, all kinds of different things, just to sort of fulfill that emptiness that they feel inside that they don't have filled with their own sense of self-worth. So that's super duper important, okay? Because they have that feeling of shame for who they are. So, like I said earlier, this is not happening because anybody tries to make it happen. Parents are not intending to cause these harms to their children. They're just not aware that what they're doing is causing these harms. And a lot of it's because it all happened to us when we were kids. But if we didn't have that extra layer of maybe ADHD on top of it, maybe we were able to recover in a little bit of a better way. Kids with ADHD, when those symptoms aren't being managed and they aren't taught how to manage their ADHD symptoms, they start to flounder and they don't have the skills to get through. And so it becomes much more deep set inside of their bodies. So that carries with them all the way into adulthood and beyond. And I think I said last week, it's like when you start to do the work on yourself and figure out, oh my gosh, this is ADHD. Here I am, 40 years old, and I'm like just learning that I have ADHD, which also, by the way, is very, very common. Most women do not get diagnosed with ADHD until between the ages of 38 and 40. Very common. It's like the plot twist in a novel, right? Where all of a sudden, it all begins to make sense. All that foreshadowing, all those things that happened along the way are starting to make sense. But so here we are, right? So we just believe that something's wrong with us, that we're not worthy. We engage in all these behaviors just to fill that hole. And we're just not filling it with the right things because we don't know what's going on. So we just want to protect ourselves and we just want to protect our hearts, right? So, signs to look out for and things that we do to cope as people with ADHD with low self-worth. People pleasers. We might become aggressive friends. I say aggressive. I don't mean it I mean it in the sense that like we will go above and beyond, do anything for our friends. If our friends need anything, anytime, anywhere, we will just be there and take care of it to the point where it kind of like freaks our friends out and they like take a step back and they're like, they don't know how to take it. Pardon me. We give up on who we are to make sure that other people don't reject us. We don't want other people to see our true selves because we fear that they're going to reject us. It gives us a temporary feeling of security, but it doesn't last long. So then we're on to the next thing that's going to give us that sense of security. And until we understand what's happening for us, we don't realize that's what we're doing. And then we've got ourselves a lovely pattern of destruction trailing behind us. And until that plot twist happens, it's just a mess. And then we have to figure it all out and pick up the pieces. But the other thing is that we've learned that our true selves are not worthy. We've learned that who we were born to be does not have value. So not only are we giving up who we truly are and working really hard to please other people, we are terrified of showing the world who we actually are because that fear of rejection is huge. We don't want the world to see our power. We don't want the world to see our light. We don't want to share our authentic self. Because that, my friend, is terrifying. That is showing our vulnerability, and that leaves us open to that judgment and that criticism that we have experienced through our entire life. It is a battle that I fight every single day. Do you think for a second that any of what I'm doing right now is easy for me? Nope. This is very, very difficult, but I find it to be extraordinarily important, and I find this message needs to be put out there, and I don't want people with ADHD to have to experience these same things because it doesn't have to be that way. Because people with ADHD are powerful and they have a perfect place in this world. There's a beautiful quote by a woman named Marianne Williamson that reads like this. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people will not feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. So this is my attempt at doing what I know is right and doing what I know and what I feel inside is going to benefit the world, because I feel the world needs a place for people like me to be able to shine, and that's what I want to offer. So if you can relate to anything that I feel, if you can relate to any of these experiences, reach out. I'm here. You can email me. You can find me on Instagram. I am an accessible human being, and I am happy to chat with you. I want to make all of these resources accessible to you, and that is my goal, and that is what I am doing. The next couple of weeks, my academy is going to be open, and people are going to, and we are going to be building this fabulous community of people just like us, who have the right to shine, who have the right to be who they were born to be, no matter what. So find me on Facebook. Check out my website, www.embracetheextra.com. You can find all my places there. Send me an email. DM me on Instagram. I am happy to connect. All right? So I hope this resonates with you on some level. But until next time, take good care.